Captain Jake Morrison stood at the observation deck of his ship, the Horizon's Edge, watching the massive space station called Harmony Prime grow larger on the view screen. The station looked like a giant wheel spinning slowly in the darkness of space, its lights twinkling like stars. This was where the Galactic Council met to decide the fate of entire worlds. Jake had made this trip dozens of times over the past 5 years, but something felt different today. The tension in the air was thick enough to cut with a knife. His crew moved quietly through the corridors, checking systems and preparing for what might be their most important mission yet. Dr. Lisa Parker walked up beside him, her tablet clutched tightly in her hands. She was Earth's smartest scientist when it came to alien cultures, and she looked worried. "Jake, I've been going over the data again. What we found on Colony 7 is going to cause a storm in that council chamber." Jake nodded grimly. Colony 7 had been one of humanity's proudest achievements, a beautiful world with perfect weather and rich soil. Then the ground started shaking, earthquakes that got worse and worse until the planet became unlivable. 30,000 people had to evacuate, but not everyone made it out in time. The worst part was what Dr. Parker had discovered in the ruins. Hidden deep in the Council's own database were geological surveys of Colony 7 that clearly showed the planet was unstable. The data was over 50 years old. The Council had known the whole time that the planet was dangerous, but they never told humanity. Ambassador Paul Carter came walking down the hallway, his formal diplomatic robes flowing behind him. He was Earth's voice in the Council, a job that had become harder and harder over the years. The aliens seemed to treat humans like children who couldn't be trusted with important decisions. "Are we ready for this?" Carter asked, though Jake could see in his eyes that the ambassador already knew the answer. "As ready as we'll ever be," Jake replied. "The evidence is solid. They can't deny what their own computers recorded." The 3 humans made their way to the shuttle bay. Around them, the ship buzzed with activity as crew members prepared for what everyone knew would be a difficult day. Earth had been part of the Galactic Council for 73 years, but the relationship had been getting worse every year. When they arrived at Harmony Prime's docking bay, alien security guards were waiting. The Valdari looked like walking crystals, their bodies reflecting light in rainbow patterns. They spoke in musical tones that the translator devices turned into cold, formal words. Ambassador Carter, Dr. Parker, Captain Morrison, "You are expected in Chamber 7. Please follow the designated path and do not deviate." The walk through Harmony Prime always amazed Jake, even when he was angry. Creatures from 100 different worlds moved through the corridors. Some floated in bubbles of gas, others crawled on dozens of legs, and a few looked almost human except for their strange-colored skin or extra arms. But today, Jake noticed something else. The aliens were staring at the human delegation more than usual. Some looked curious, others seemed worried, and a few appeared openly hostile. Word had already spread about what the humans planned to say today. Chamber 7 was enormous, with seats arranged in circles that rose up toward a domed ceiling. In the center sat the Council's leaders, ancient beings who had been making decisions for thousands of years. The Valdari representative, Counselor Zethavar, was so old that parts of his crystal body had turned completely transparent. Ambassador Carter walked to the speaking platform in the center of the chamber. His voice echoed in the huge space as he began his presentation about Colony 7. He showed pictures of the abandoned cities, the cracked ground, and the memorial walls with names of people who had died. Then Dr. Parker stepped forward with her evidence. She connected her tablet to the chamber's display system, and suddenly everyone could see the Council's own geological surveys. The data was clear and undeniable. The Council had known Colony 7 was dangerous before humans even started building there. A murmur ran through the chamber like a wave. Aliens whispered to each other in dozens of different languages. Some of the younger species looked shocked, but the older Council members remained calm and unmoved. Counselor Zethavar finally spoke, his crystalline voice ringing through the chamber. "The data you present is accurate, Ambassador Carter. However, you misunderstand its significance. The Council determined that your species needed to learn through experience, rather than be given all knowledge immediately." "Experience?" Dr. Parker stepped forward, her face flushed with anger. 30,000 people died because you decided we needed to learn a lesson? "Your species is young," another Council member said. "This one was Nexthull, a being made of swirling gases contained in a mechanical suit. You advance too quickly, take too many risks. Perhaps if humans experience consequences for their reckless expansion, they would become more cautious. Jake felt his hands clench into fists. Around the chamber, he could see other alien species watching the exchange with interest. Some looked uncomfortable with what the council leaders were saying. Ambassador Carter's voice remained steady, but Jake could hear the steel underneath his diplomatic tone. So you're saying that human lives are acceptable losses in your teaching methods? All species must learn their place in the galactic order, Counselor Zethvar replied. Humans are like children playing with fusion reactors. Your species lacks the wisdom that comes with eons of existence. Perhaps in another 1,000 years you might be ready for true galactic citizenship. The chamber fell silent. Jake could feel the weight of that insult settling over the human delegation like a heavy blanket. They had come here seeking justice for their dead colonists and instead found themselves being treated like ignorant children. Ambassador Carter looked up at the council leaders, then around at the hundreds of alien representatives watching from their seats. When he spoke, his voice carried clearly to every corner of the chamber. Counselor Zethvar, members of the Galactic Council, I came here today believing that we were partners in this galaxy. I thought that membership in this council meant we would work together, share knowledge, and help each other grow and prosper. He paused, letting his words sink in. Instead, I find that you see us as subjects to be managed, children to be taught harsh lessons through the deaths of our people. If this is what galactic citizenship means, if this is the price of your so-called wisdom, then perhaps it's time humanity charted its own course among the stars. The chamber erupted. Aliens jumped to their feet, voices raised in dozens of languages as translators struggled to keep up. Some seemed angry, others appeared shocked, and a few looked almost pleased by the humans' defiant words. Jake watched Ambassador Carter walk away from the speaking platform, with his head held high. Dr. Parker gathered her evidence tablets, her face set in determined lines. As they made their way toward the exit, Jake realized that everything had just changed. Humanity had just declared its independence from the galaxy's most powerful organization. The question now was, what would happen next? President Linda Hayes stood at the window of her office in Geneva, looking out at Lake Geneva as the morning sun painted the water gold. Behind her, the emergency session of the Earth Assembly was about to begin, and the weight of an entire species rested on the decisions that would be made in the next few hours. The door opened, and General Frank Miller walked in, his face grim. As chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, he had been working around the clock since Captain Morrison's ship had returned from Harmony Prime 3 days ago. Madam President, we've received the Council's official response, Miller said, handing her a data tablet. It's not good. Linda read the message quickly, her expression growing darker with each line. The Galactic Council was giving humanity exactly 30 days to apologize for Ambassador Carter's unacceptable behavior and submit to what they called a probationary period. This would mean no new human colonies for 50 years, all human ships restricted to approved trade routes, and Council observers placed on Earth itself. They want to put us in a cage, Linda said quietly. That's not the worst part, Miller replied. Our intelligence sources have intercepted communications between 3 Council species. They're calling it the human problem and discussing solutions that go far beyond trade restrictions. Linda set down the tablet and walked to her desk, where photos of human colonies across the galaxy were displayed. New Tokyo with its flying cars and glass towers, farming worlds like Green Valley where children played in fields of golden wheat, mining stations where brave humans pulled precious metals from asteroid belts. All of it could be lost if they made the wrong choice today. Dr. Alex Wright knocked and entered the office. As director of the Human Innovation Initiative, he had been pushing for years to break free from Council restrictions on technology development. His excitement was barely contained despite the serious situation. Madam President, I've been running calculations all night. If we reject the Council's ultimatum, we won't just survive. We'll thrive. The restrictions they've placed on our technology development have been holding us back for decades. Explain, Linda said, sitting behind her desk. Wright activated a holographic projector, filling the air with charts and graphs. Look at our advancement rate during the first 20 years of Council membership versus the last 20 years. We've slowed down dramatically, not because we've reached our limits, but because the Council keeps telling us certain technologies are too dangerous or inappropriate for our development level. He highlighted several areas on his charts. Faster than light travel, energy weapons, terraforming technology, artificial intelligence research. We've had breakthrough ideas in all these areas, but the Council has blocked every attempt to develop them fully. General Miller crossed his arms. That's all very interesting, Doctor, but what about defense? If we leave the Council, we lose their protection. There are hostile species out there that would love to take over human colonies. Actually, sir, that might not be as big a problem as we think, Wright replied. Remember, we've been developing defensive technologies in secret for years just in case. Project SHIELD has created planetary defense systems that surpass anything in the Council's arsenal. Linda studied the data, her mind racing through possibilities and consequences. A soft chime indicated that the assembly session was about to begin. Representatives from every human world and colony would be watching, waiting for her to guide them through the most important decision in human history. The assembly hall was packed with representatives both in person and appearing via hologram from distant colonies. Linda could see the tension in their faces, the hope mixed with fear. These were people who had left Earth to build new lives among the stars, and now those lives hung in the balance. Fellow humans, Linda began, her voice carrying clearly through the hall, we face a choice that will determine the future of our species. The Galactic Council offers us security at the price of our freedom. They promise us protection if we accept permanent limitations on our growth and potential. She paused, looking around the hall at faces she had known for years. But I ask you this, when has humanity ever chosen the safe path? When have we ever accepted that someone else knew better than we did about our own destiny? A representative from the mining colonies stood up. Madam President, what about the colonies that depend on Council trade routes? Without access to their markets, some of our worlds might not survive. A valid concern, Linda replied. Dr. Wright, share your analysis of our economic situation. Wright stepped forward, his holographic displays showing trade figures and resource flows. Representatives, we've been more successful than we realized. Human colonies now produce 30% of the galaxy's food supplies, 25% of its manufactured goods, and we've developed mining techniques that extract resources more efficiently than anyone else. He highlighted specific trade relationships. More importantly, we've discovered that 18 non-Council species have been quietly reaching out to human traders, offering better terms than they get from Council-approved merchants. We're not as dependent on the Council as they want us to believe. The representative from New Tokyo raised her hand. What about technology sharing? The Council has given us access to advanced technologies that took other species thousands of years to develop. That's exactly the problem, Wright replied. They've given us their old technology and told us not to improve it. Every time we've tried to advance beyond what they've approved, we've been told it's too dangerous or that we're not ready. He brought up a new display showing human innovation rates. In the areas where we've been allowed to develop freely, we've surpassed Council technology in less than 50 years. Imagine what we could achieve if all restrictions were removed. General Miller stood to address the assembly. I won't lie to you. Independence means risk. We'll be on our own if hostile forces attack human colonies. But I've reviewed our defensive capabilities, and I believe we're stronger than the Council wants us to know. He activated his own presentation, showing ship deployments and defensive installations. We have over 2,000 ships in our fleet, all equipped with weapons and shields developed from studying captured alien technology. Our colonies have defensive systems that have never been tested, but our simulations suggest they would surprise any potential attackers. The debate continued for hours. Representatives shared their fears, their hopes, and their dreams for humanity's future. Some argued for accepting the Council's terms, believing that 50 years of restricted growth was better than potential extinction. Others demanded complete independence, willing to risk everything for freedom. Finally, Linda stood to address the assembly one last time. Representatives, I've listened to all your concerns and I understand the magnitude of this decision. But I keep coming back to one simple fact. The Council's offer isn't really about our safety. It's about their control. She activated a display showing the intercepted communications that intelligence had discovered. 3 Council species have been meeting in secret to discuss what they call the human problem. Their preferred solution involves redistributing our colonies to other species they consider more trustworthy, and placing Earth under permanent council oversight. The hall erupted in angry voices. Representatives jumped to their feet, shouting questions and demands for more information. Linda waited for the noise to die down before continuing. They see us as a threat to their established order. Our success, our rapid development, our refusal to accept limitations, all of it challenges their authority. This ultimatum isn't about teaching us a lesson. It's about putting us in our place permanently. She looked around the hall, meeting the eyes of as many representatives as she could. I propose that we reject their ultimatum completely. Not just the probationary period, but our entire membership in the Galactic Council. It's time for humanity to stand on its own. The vote was closer than Linda had hoped, but decisive enough to move forward. 68% of the representatives voted for complete independence from the Galactic Council. That evening, Linda stood before cameras that would broadcast her message not just to Earth, but to every human colony across the galaxy. My fellow humans, today we have chosen freedom over security, growth over stagnation. Effective immediately, the United Earth Federation withdraws from the Galactic Council. She paused, knowing that her next words would echo through history. We will forge our own path among the stars. We will defend ourselves and our colonies with strength and determination. We will trade with any species that approaches us in friendship. And we will continue to push the boundaries of what humanity can achieve. Within hours of the broadcast, responses began flooding in from human colonies across 12 star systems. One by one, they declared their support for Earth's decision. The Human Trade Network, which had quietly become vital to dozens of worlds, began its immediate withdrawal from Council-controlled space. Linda watched the responses come in, knowing that there would be no going back. Humanity had chosen its path, and now they would discover what they were truly capable of when freed from the chains of others' expectations. 6 months had passed since humanity's dramatic exit from the Galactic Council, and the aliens were getting impatient. On the bridge of the Council flagship Eternal Harmony, Fleet Commander Veltash reviewed reports from across the galaxy with growing frustration. Still no word from the humans? He asked his intelligence officer, a spider-like creature whose multiple eyes never stopped moving. None, Commander. Our monitoring stations detect human ships moving through space, but they refuse to respond to any communication attempts. Their trade vessels have completely withdrawn from Council space. Veltash studied the tactical displays floating around his command chair. The Council had expected humanity to come crawling back within weeks, desperate for the protection and trade relationships they had abandoned. Instead, human colonies seemed to be thriving in isolation. Meanwhile, in a secret research facility on Luna, engineer Maria Santos was putting the finishing touches on humanity's greatest achievement yet. The quantum drive system spread out before her looked like a sculpture made of light and metal, its crystalline components humming with barely contained energy. Final test sequence initiated, Maria announced to the observation deck where Dr. Alex Wright and a dozen other scientists watched nervously. If this works, we won't need their hyperspace beacons anymore. The drive activated with a sound like singing crystal. Reality seemed to bend around the test chamber as space itself folded and twisted. For a moment, the laws of physics appeared to be more suggestions than rules. Test successful, Maria reported, her voice barely containing her excitement. Travel time to Proxima Centauri would be 36 hours instead of 3 weeks. We can go anywhere in the galaxy without using a single Council-controlled hyperspace route. 3,000 light-years away, Commander Ryan Blake was about to make history. His ship, the Silent Running, hung in empty space at the edge of human territory. It was sleek and black, designed for speed and stealth rather than the bulky comfort of civilian vessels. Maria's drive system is installed and ready, Commander, his engineer reported. All we need is your order. Ryan looked at the star charts displayed on his view screen. The Council believed that certain regions of space were unreachable without their massive hyperspace beacons. Today, humanity would prove them wrong. Engage quantum drive, Ryan ordered. The Silent Running disappeared from normal space in a flash of blue light. When it reappeared, it was in a region of space that the Council's maps marked as impossible to reach. Ancient stars burned in strange colors and planets hung in the void like jewels waiting to be discovered. But Ryan wasn't the only human making discoveries. On the archaeological dig site at Kepler 442b, Dr. Peter Collins was carefully brushing dust away from what looked like a metallic wall covered in symbols. His team had been excavating precursor ruins for 2 years, but this was different. Professor Collins, his assistant called out excitedly. You need to see this. The translation matrix is working on these symbols, and the message is incredible. Peter hurried over to where his student was working with a tablet connected to their best translation computers. The symbols were definitely Precursor, the mysterious race that had disappeared from the galaxy millions of years ago. But the message they contained was unlike anything they had found before. Read it to me, Peter said, hardly daring to believe what he was seeing. It says, to those who come after, know that we face the same choice you now face. The council of our time offered us security in exchange for our freedom to grow and explore. We chose independence, and in that choice we found powers beyond imagination. Peter felt his hands shaking as he read the rest of the translation. The precursors hadn't disappeared mysteriously. They had evolved beyond the need for physical existence, but before they left, they had hidden technology and knowledge for others who might follow their path. The message continued. Look for the markers we have left in the places the councils fear to go. There you will find the tools to surpass all who would limit your potential. While Peter made his groundbreaking discovery, the Galactic Council was finally beginning to realize the scope of their problem. In the Great Chamber of Harmony Prime, emergency sessions were being held daily as economic reports grew worse and worse. Trade volume has decreased by 18%, reported the Council's chief economist, a floating jellyfish-like creature whose thoughts appeared as colored lights on its transparent body. 17 non-member species have approached human colonies directly, bypassing our trade regulations entirely. Councillor Zethvar's crystal body flickered with patterns that indicated deep concern. How is this possible? Without access to our hyperspace network, human ships should barely be able to leave their own systems. Our monitoring stations report human vessels appearing in regions we thought were unreachable, the intelligence coordinator replied. They seem to have developed some form of transportation technology that doesn't require our beacons. The chamber filled with worried murmurs from dozens of species. The Council's power had always been based on their control of galactic transportation and communication. If humans could travel independently, everything changed. Back on Earth, Captain Jake Morrison was preparing for the most ambitious exploration mission in human history. His ship, the Horizon's Edge, had been upgraded with Maria's quantum drive and equipped with precursor technology that Dr. Collins had discovered. Jake, Dr. Lisa Parker said as she joined him on the bridge, I've been analyzing the data from Ryan's scouting missions. There are inhabitable planets in the regions beyond Council space, and some of them show signs of intelligent life. Friendly, intelligent life. I hope, Jake replied with a grin. That remains to be seen. But the energy signatures suggest they're not council members. They might be species that chose independence long ago, just like we did. Jake studied the star charts on his view screen, showing the routes that Ryan's fast ships had discovered over the past months. Humanity was no longer limited to the narrow corridors of space that the Council allowed them to travel. The entire galaxy was opening up before them. Set course for the Andromeda sector, Jake ordered. Let's see what's waiting for us out there. As the Horizon's Edge disappeared into quantum space, similar scenes were playing out across human territory. Colony ships were launching toward worlds that the Council had declared off limits. Mining expeditions were heading for asteroid belts rich in resources that alien species had never learned to extract properly. Most importantly, human diplomats were making contact with dozens of non-council species that had been waiting for someone brave enough to ignore the galaxy's established order. The Zephyrian Trade Collective, a group of insectoid species that the Council had refused to recognize, sent their first ambassador to human space. The message they carried was simple. We have been waiting centuries for someone to challenge the Council's monopoly on galactic civilization. Perhaps it is time for a new kind of galactic community. On Harmony Prime, the emergency sessions were becoming more desperate by the day. Fleet Commander Veltash presented increasingly dire reports about human activities in supposedly unreachable regions of space. They're not just exploring counselors, he reported. They're building. We've detected the construction of permanent human installations in 3 different sectors that we've never been able to reach. If they establish permanent colonies there, they'll have access to resources that could make them completely independent of galactic trade. Councillor Zethvar's crystal body darkened with anger. Then we must act before they become too strong to control. What military options do we have? Limited, sir. Our fleet was designed to maintain order within council space, not to project power into unknown regions. The humans seem to have superior mobility, and we don't fully understand their defensive capabilities. The chamber fell silent as the implications sank in. For the first time in millennia, the Galactic Council faced a challenge they couldn't simply vote away or regulate into submission. Meanwhile, Maria Santos was already working on improvements to her quantum drive system. Version 2 will be twice as fast, she told Dr. Wright during their latest meeting. We'll be able to cross the galaxy in days instead of weeks. No force in known space will be able to catch a human ship that doesn't want to be caught. As the first year of human independence drew to a close, it became clear that the Council's isolation gambit had failed completely. Instead of forcing humanity back into submission, they had unleashed a wave of innovation and exploration that was reshaping the galaxy. The question was no longer whether humanity would survive without the Council. The question was whether the Council could survive without humanity. 2 years after humanity's break from the Galactic Council, Fleet Admiral Kate Sullivan stood in the command center of humanity's newest military installation. The orbital defense platform hung above Earth like a metal moon, bristling with weapons that no alien had ever seen before. Admiral, we're receiving another diplomatic message from the Council, her communications officer reported. It's the 15th one this month. Kate didn't bother looking up from the tactical displays that showed human ships moving through space across dozens of star systems. Same message as always? More or less. They want us to return to negotiations and discuss our reintegration into galactic society. Kate smiled grimly. Tell them we're too busy exploring the galaxy to chat right now. The truth was that humanity had not just survived their exile from the Council, they had exploded into a period of growth that historians were already calling the Great Acceleration. Human colonies now existed in 37 star systems, many in regions that the Council had declared impossible to reach. On the agricultural world of New Montana, farmers were tending to crops that grew 3 times faster than anything on Earth, thanks to precursor agricultural techniques that Dr. Collins had discovered. The planet's defensive shields, invisible barriers of energy that could protect the entire world, hummed quietly in the background. In the Council chambers on Harmony Prime, War Leader Kethmore of the Vrex hegemony slammed his armored fist on the speaking platform. The reptilian warrior was nearly 3 meters tall, with scales that reflected light like black metal and eyes that burned like red coals. Enough talk, Kethmore growled, his voice echoing through the great chamber. The humans mock us with their defiance. Every day they grow stronger while we sit here debating like frightened children. Counselor Zethvar's crystal body flickered with uncertain patterns. War Leader, we must consider all options. Military action against the humans could have unpredictable consequences. The only unpredictable consequence I see is allowing them to grow strong enough to challenge us directly, Kethmore replied. My intelligence sources report that 17 species have now left the Council to join what the humans call their independent trade alliance. If we don't act soon, there won't be a Council left to save. The chamber filled with worried murmurs. The economic reports had been getting worse every month. Human trade routes now carried more goods than the official Council networks, and their prices were so much lower that even loyal Council species were quietly buying from human merchants. But there was something else that worried the Council leaders even more. Human technology was advancing at a rate that seemed impossible. Ships that could travel faster than anything in the galactic fleet. Weapons that used principles of physics that alien scientists didn't understand. Defensive systems that seemed to violate known laws of energy conservation. Perhaps, Kethmore continued, a limited demonstration of force would remind these upstart humans of their proper place in the galactic order. One destroyed colony would show them that independence has consequences. On Earth, Admiral Kate Sullivan had been preparing for exactly this possibility. Human intelligence services had been monitoring Council communications, and the rising talk of military action hadn't gone unnoticed. Helen, Kate called to Diplomatic Corps leader Helen Foster, who was reviewing reports from human ambassadors across the galaxy. What's the status of our defensive preparations? Helen looked up from her tablet, her expression serious. All 37 colony worlds now have planetary shield systems operational. The technology we've developed from precursor ruins is unlike anything the Council has encountered before. She activated a holographic display showing the defensive installations around New Montana. The shields don't just stop incoming attacks. They absorb the energy and redirect it back at the attackers. Any ship that tries to bombard one of our worlds will find itself facing its own weapons. Captain Jake Morrison walked into the command center, just returned from another exploration mission beyond Council space. His latest discovery had been a group of independent civilizations that called themselves the Free Worlds Confederation. They had been hiding from the Council for over 1,000 years, developing their own technologies and trade networks. "Admiral, I have a message from the Free Worlds," Jake reported. "They're offering to share defensive technologies with us in exchange for access to our quantum drive systems. Apparently, they've been working on weapons that can disable entire fleets without destroying them." Kate studied the offer carefully. Humanity's rapid expansion had attracted attention from species across the galaxy, many of whom had been chafing under Council restrictions for centuries. The Independent Trade Alliance now included 43 different civilizations, and more were joining every month. "Accept their offer," Kate decided. "If the Council decides to attack us, we'll need every advantage we can get." The attack came 3 weeks later. Kethmore had convinced enough Council members that a quick strike would solve the human problem before it grew any larger. A fleet of 60 Vrex warships dropped out of hyperspace at the edge of the New Montana system, their weapons already charging for bombardment. The lead ship, Kethmore's flagship Conquest of Stars, broadcast a message to the planet below. "Human colonists, you have 30 minutes to evacuate this world. Your defiance of the Galactic Council ends today." On New Montana's surface, Colony Administrator Bill Clark received the message while having breakfast with his family. His wife Mary looked worried, but their teenage daughter Amy just rolled her eyes. "Dad, are they seriously trying to scare us with those old rust buckets?" Amy asked, pointing at the view screen showing the Vrex fleet. Bill smiled at his daughter's confidence. The colonists of New Montana had been training for this possibility for 2 years. Every adult knew their role in the defense plan, and every child understood that their world was protected by technology that the attackers couldn't imagine. "Amy, go tell your friends that it's time for the demonstration we've been practicing," Bill said calmly. "The Vrex are about to learn why humans don't make good victims." As the 30-minute deadline expired, Kethmore gave the order to commence bombardment. 60 warships fired simultaneously, sending enough destructive energy toward New Montana to crack the planet's crust and boil its oceans. The energy beam struck New Montana's planetary shield and simply disappeared, absorbed into a barrier that the attacking fleet couldn't even see. For a moment, nothing seemed to happen. Then the shield began to glow with stored energy. "What are those readings?" Kethmore demanded from his bridge, staring at sensor displays that showed impossible energy levels building around the human planet. His science officer, a nervous creature that looked like a walking flower, checked and rechecked the instruments. "War leader, the planet appears to be storing the energy from our weapons. The power levels are climbing beyond anything in our database." "Impossible," Kethmore growled. "Fire again. Full power to all weapons." The Vrex fleet fired everything they had, pouring enough energy toward New Montana to destroy a dozen worlds. Again, the planetary shield absorbed every beam and bolt, storing the energy and growing brighter. Then New Montana fired back. The stored energy erupted from the planet's defensive systems, not as destructive beams but as targeted electromagnetic pulses that struck each attacking ship with surgical precision. The Vrex vessels didn't explode or break apart. They simply stopped working. Across the fleet, engines went silent, weapons powered down, and life support systems switched to emergency backup. 60 warships hung dead in space, their crews unharmed but completely helpless. Kethmore found himself staring at blank displays as his flagship's systems failed one by one. Emergency lighting flickered on, and the ship's computer announced in a calm voice, "All primary systems offline. Cause external electromagnetic interference. Estimated repair time, 72 hours. Then the human rescue ships arrived. A dozen sleek vessels appeared from quantum space, broadcasting medical assistance frequencies, and prepared to provide aid to the stranded Vrex crews. The lead ship, Captain Morrison's Horizon's Edge, sent a message that would be remembered across the galaxy. "Attention Vrex fleet, we detect that your ships have suffered system failures. Human rescue vessels are standing by to provide medical assistance. emergency supplies, and temporary shelter for your crews. We harbor no malice toward any species, but we will defend ourselves and our people against all threats. The Battle of New Montana lasted less than an hour, but its effects rippled across the galaxy within days. The story spread from species to species. Humanity had not only survived the Council's military demonstration, but had turned it into a demonstration of their own defensive capabilities and moral principles. Kethmore's fleet was eventually repaired and allowed to return to Council space, but the damage to the Council's authority was permanent. If the mighty Vrex hegemony could be neutralized so easily by a single human colony, what did that say about the Council's ability to protect its members? Admiral Kate Sullivan received reports of the battle while reviewing intelligence data about Council activities. The victory at New Montana was complete, but she knew it was just the beginning. "Helen, what's the status of Council membership?" Kate asked. Helen consulted her latest diplomatic reports. 12 more species have formally 3 years had passed since the failed attack on New Montana, and the galaxy had changed in ways that no one could have predicted. In his ancient chambers on Harmony Prime, Council Prime Zelthar stood before windows that showed the vast emptiness of space, contemplating the collapse of an order that had lasted for millions of years. The being that had led the Galactic Council for 8 centuries looked fragile now, his energy form flickering like a candle in the wind. Reports from across the galaxy painted the same picture. The Council's authority was crumbling as species after species chose independence over security. "Prime Zelthar," his aide whispered, approaching carefully. "The latest membership report." Zelthar accepted the data tablet with hands that seemed to be made of starlight and shadow. The numbers were even worse than he had feared. Only 43 species remained in the Council, down from over 200 just 3 years ago. The Independent Trade Alliance, led by humanity, now included 157 civilizations. But the real shock was in the economic data. The Human Trade Network carried 70% of the galaxy's commerce. Their ships moved goods faster than Council vessels, and their prices were so competitive that even loyal Council worlds were quietly doing business with the rebellious humans. "There is more." "Prime," the aide continued nervously, 12 more species have submitted formal requests to leave the Council. They cite better trade opportunities and technological advancement as their reasons. Zelthar set down the tablet and turned back to the window. In the distance, he could see human ships moving through space with easy confidence, their quantum drives allowing them to appear and disappear at will. They had become everything the Council had once been and more. On Earth, Dr. Peter Collins was putting the finishing touches on his most important translation yet. The precursor ruins had yielded their final secret, a message that explained not just their disappearance but the purpose behind everything they had left behind. "President Hayes," Peter said as he entered her office in Geneva, "you need to see this immediately." Linda looked up from the reports she had been reading about humanity's expanding influence across the galaxy. At 68, she had aged visibly during her years guiding humanity through its greatest transformation, but her eyes still burned with the determination that had led them to independence. Peter activated his portable holographic projector, filling the air with precursor symbols that slowly translated themselves into human language. "This is from the deepest chamber of the ruins on Kepler. 442b, it's addressed to whatever species would eventually follow their path." Linda read the translation aloud. "To those who break free from the chains of imposed order, know that you have passed the test that every galactic civilization must face. The choice between stagnation under centralized control and the risks and rewards of true independence is not just a political decision. It is an evolutionary necessity." She paused, struck by the implications. "Peter, are you saying that the precursors deliberately set up this test?" "It appears so, Madam President. They left behind technology and knowledge for species that would choose independence over security. But there's more." Peter highlighted another section of the translation. "They didn't vanish mysteriously. They evolved beyond the need for physical existence, but before they transcended, they created a network of hidden civilizations across multiple galaxies." The message continued. "Those who prove themselves worthy of true independence will be invited to join a community that spans not just this galaxy, but others beyond counting. Look for our signals beyond the galactic rim, where new adventures await." Meanwhile, Captain Jake Morrison was already discovering what lay beyond the edge of known space. His ship, the Horizon's Edge, hung in the void between galaxies, surrounded by stars that no Council database had ever catalogued. His quantum drives had carried them further than any ship in galactic history. "Captain," his science officer called out excitedly, "we're receiving a signal. It's definitely artificial, and the pattern matches precursor technology signatures." Jake studied the signal analysis on his view screen. The transmission was coming from a region of space that shouldn't have contained any civilizations at all, yet the reading showed massive energy sources and what appeared to be constructed habitats. "Send a response," Jake ordered. "Let them know we're explorers from humanity, and we come in peace." The reply came within minutes, transmitted in perfect human language. "Welcome, children of Earth. We have been waiting for you to find us. You are the first species in this galaxy to pass the test of independence in over 50,000 years. Please approach coordinates that we are transmitting. It is time for humanity to learn its true place in the universe." Back in the solar system, Admiral Kate Sullivan was dealing with a more immediate concern. Long-range sensors had detected a single ship approaching Earth, but this wasn't like any vessel in her databases. It was enormous, easily the size of a small moon, and it seemed to bend light around itself in impossible ways. "Admiral," her communications officer reported, "the ship is broadcasting a message on all frequencies. It's requesting permission to approach Earth for diplomatic purposes." Kate studied the sensor readings with growing amazement. "Who's sending the message?" "According to the transmission, it's Council Prime Zelthar himself. He's coming here personally." The arrival of the Council's ancient leader sent shockwaves through human space. Zelthar had never left Harmony Prime in recorded history. Yet here he was, approaching Earth in a ship that represented the pinnacle of Council technology. President Hayes agreed to meet with the ancient being in the rebuilt United Nations building in Geneva. As Zelthar's energy form materialized in the assembly hall, humans around the world watched with fascination and caution. The ancient leader looked smaller somehow, less imposing than he had in the grand chambers of Harmony Prime. His voice, when he spoke, carried the weight of eons, but also a note of humility that no human had ever heard before. "President Hayes, representatives of humanity," Zelthar began. "I come before you not as the leader of the Galactic Council, but as a being who has witnessed the rise and fall of countless civilizations across millions of years." He paused, his energy form flickering with what might have been emotion. "I have made a grave error in judgment regarding your species. We saw your rapid advancement and independent nature as threats to galactic stability. We were wrong." Linda listened carefully, aware that every word of this conversation would be analyzed by historians for centuries to come. "Council Prime, we appreciate your visit, but humanity has moved beyond the need for Council approval." "I know," Zelthar replied. "That is precisely why I am here. The Galactic Council as it has existed is dying. Half of our member species have joined your independent trade alliance, and the others are considering it. Your model of voluntary cooperation and technological sharing has proven superior to our system of imposed order." He activated a holographic display showing the current state of the galaxy. Human influence was visible as a web of trade routes and communication networks that connected hundreds of worlds across dozens of sectors. "I come to you with a proposal," Zelthar continued, "not for humanity to rejoin the Council, but for the Council to dissolve itself and create something new. A galactic community based on the principles you have demonstrated. Voluntary membership, shared technological advancement, and respect for the independence of each species." The proposal was stunning in its scope. Zelthar was offering to abandon an institution that had dominated galactic civilization for millions of years and replace it with something modeled on humanity's success. Linda looked around the assembly hall at the faces of human representatives who had gathered for this historic moment. Then she stood to address the ancient being who had once considered humanity too young and reckless for galactic citizenship. "Council Prime Zelthar, we appreciate your proposal, but humanity has learned something important over the past 3 years. We don't need anyone's permission to reach for the stars. We've built relationships with civilizations across the galaxy based on mutual respect and beneficial trade." She gestured toward the display showing human influence spreading across known space. "We'll maintain friendly relations with any species that approaches us in peace. But Earth will never again subordinate its destiny to a council of others, no matter how well-intentioned. Zelthar's energy form brightened with what seemed to be approval rather than disappointment. I understand your position, President Hayes. Perhaps that is the final lesson I needed to learn about humanity. You have grown beyond the need for external validation. The ancient being paused, then continued with something that might have been a smile in his voice. Would you consider a different arrangement? Not membership in a new council, but partnership between equals? The remaining council species could join your independent trade alliance as individual members rather than as a bloc. Linda considered the offer carefully. Individual species would be welcome to apply for membership in the alliance, but they would be judged on their own merits and commitment to our principles of voluntary cooperation and technological sharing. A fair arrangement, Zelthar agreed.